Hello and welcome once again to Let's Start Cooking. I'm Wayne, and today I'm going to make cinnamon swirl bread. But we're going to do it a little bit different because I know we love to have it, we love to smell in the kitchen, but who wants to spend 4 hours to make bread? So I'm going to show you a recipe that you're going to be able to do this, and we're not going to use yeast. We're not going to have to worry about kneading it. We're not going to have to worry about letting it rise for 2-3 hours. It's a real simple recipe. But before we get started on that, I'll take the time now to ask that you like and share this video and you subscribe to the channel and give us a thumbs up. It really helps us out. So what we're going to do first is we're going to work with our dry ingredients. And it's real simple. I'll have all the ingredients listed in my description as usual. But what we're going to do is we're going to take our flour, which is about 2.5 cups, and we're going to take our sugar, which is a cup of sugar. Now we're going to need cinnamon, but with the cinnamon we need a total of 3 teaspoons for this recipe. But we only want about 1 for when we're going to start. So we're just going to add 1 teaspoon. We're going to add our salt, our baking soda, and our baking powder. And we're just going to mix this together just a little bit. And we really do this because we want to break up some of the clumps if there's clumps in flour, because we didn't sift this flour. So we just want to make sure that we don't have anything sticking together, that's all. And now what we're going to do is we're going to set this aside because we're going to do one of the more interesting things about this recipe. Since we're not going to use yeast, we need something to help this rise. And what we're going to do is we're going to take milk and we're actually going to add citric acid to this. Now, you can use lemon juice or citric acid, or you can even use a little bit of lime juice, but I would just be careful because it's a little bit stronger of a flavor. Now, what this is going to do, this is actually going to start to curdle this milk. What this does is it helps it get a little bit fluffier, and it acts as our yeast because we're not going to use it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this to our milk, and we're going to quick mix this up. And this is going to want to start to curdle. So what we're going to do is we're just going to mix this up and let it go. And we're going to let this sit now for 5 minutes. So we'll let this set to the side, and we'll give that 5 minutes. All right, we've left our milk and our citric acid sit for 5 minutes. And basically what that's going to do, as you can see, is starting to separate the curds from the whey. And that's basic, and that's what we want. This is, believe it or not, this is what we want. Because this is just like, it's almost like using buttermilk. And that's what we want. We want to separate this because it's going to, like I said, it's going to add to a little bit more fluffier bread, and it's going to make it just less dense. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this, and we're going to add this to a bowl. We want all this out. And to that, we're going to add 1/3 a cup of melted butter. And we're going to add 2 large eggs. And we're just going to whisk all this together now. We just want to make sure we get this all nice and mixed up. And again, this is one of the recipes, like I said, if you don't want to sit in the kitchen and you don't want to sit here and, you have to wait so many hours, 45 minutes to an hour for it to rise, then you have to knead it back down, then you have to do it again and let it rise. You like that cinnamon bread, but you don't want to sit in the kitchen for a couple hours. This is what we have. Now, once we have this done, what we're going to do, we're going to take our dry ingredients, and we're we're going to add them in, but we're going to add it slow. We're going to do this in about 3 parts. So we don't want to add all this at one shot. We just want to add a little bit at a time. And we don't want to go real nuts with this now. We just want to mix this up just enough to get it incorporated into our batter. And we just want to go gentle with this. We don't want to, you know, do any more beating than we have to. And once we get thick, we're not going to use our whisk anymore. But we're just going to add this slowly in. And we're going to make sure that as we go, we scrape down the sides. And with any dough, whenever you're making a dough, even a cake batter, you'll notice you don't want to stir and mix too much, because the longer you do that, the tougher it gets. And we don't want to do that. We just want to mix this up just enough that we have everything incorporated. We don't have dry spots. If you ever made any type of a souffle or anything like that, you always see where it says fold in, especially when you're making a mousse, a chocolate mousse or anything like that. They want you to fold stuff in. They don't want you to beat it so much, because the more you beat that batter or dough, it makes it really tough. So we're just going to add our last little bit in. And we'll get this all mixed up and incorporated. Once we have this mixed up, and we scrape the bottom and we make sure there's nothing on the bottom or on the sides, we're just going to set this aside just for a moment, because what we want to do is we have now our wet ingredients and our dry mixed together, but we want to add our cinnamon swirl to this, so we have to do this a little bit separately. So now that we, like I said, now that we have our wet and dry ingredients combined, we have this into the side, what we're going to do now is we're going to actually create the cinnamon for the cinnamon swirl. So what we want to do is we're going to take our brown sugar, our cinnamon, and we're going to take some melted butter. And we're just going to mix this all together. And this is what's going to go inside of our bread. Because we want to make sure that we get this mixed up really good. And once we have this mixed up like this, now what we're going to do is we're going to make 3 lines of this in our bread dough. And once we get it to this point, we know we're nice and mixed up. What we're going to do now is we're going to take our bread pan, and I just have a normal regular bread loaf pan, and I did spray this. I didn't use butter and I didn't use the flour method. I actually sprayed this. And you could do whatever you prefer. I am not here to tell you which way to do non-stick. And we're just going to add half of this in for now. Get half of this in. I'm just going to smooth this out just a little bit. And now what we want to do with this is we're going to take the cinnamon that we made, and we're just going to very lightly just drop it in, because we're not going to try to be neat with this, but we just want to drop this in, because what we're going to do is we're going to help this spread around. And we want quite a bit of this in our bread. And once we get that, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a toothpick, and we're just going to go like this with it. And as you can see, we're not trying to bury it. We just want to break it up. That's all. We're not going to push down. We're not going to pull up on it. We're just going to make some designs in it, go around. This doesn't really matter what you do. You can do whatever you want with this. It doesn't really matter. We're just going to go around, swirl it around it a little bit. You can make a figure 8. You can just do straight lines. You can do whatever you want with this. What I would not suggest, once you get to this point, I would not suggest taking it and trying to straighten it out. Because if you do that, you're going to push all this cinnamon down to the bottom. And we don't want to do that. And now that we have it like that, we're going to take the rest of our batter now. And we're going to put the batter right over this. Just going to try to lay it right over everything now. See if we can get the rest of this out. And again, this is what's nice about this, because we're actually making a batter and we don't have to worry about kneading dough. We don't have to worry about finding a nice warm spot somewhere to let it rise and knock it down again and let it rise again. And now we're going to take and we're just going to try to spread this out just a little bit, because like I said, you don't want to take this now and tap it, because if you try to tap this down to straighten everything out, you're just going to knock all that cinnamon down to the bottom. We don't want to do that. We want to stay right where we're at. There's nothing special about doing this. You can do this any way you want. And now we're just going to take the rest of this and we're just going to break this up right over the bread. And as this heats up, this is all going to melt down in through. And that's what we want. We just want to help it along just a little bit. So we get all this in, and now once we have this in, we're going to do the same thing that we did before. And we're just going to try to poke this around, because what we want to do again is we just want to break up these clumps a little bit and just swirl it around. That's all. And now that our oven is heated up to 350 degrees, what we're going to do after we swirl this, we're going to put this in the oven and we're going to bake this for about 50 minutes, almost an hour. And again, it's just like any other thing that when you bake, you can use a toothpick. And what you want to do is you just want to make sure that it comes out dry. And if it does, what we're going to do is we're going to take this out. And we're going to let this obviously cool. But we're just going to swirl this around just a little bit. And once we get to here now, and that's all there is to this recipe. Now we're going to put this in the oven for 50 minutes. And I will see you as soon as it's done. All right, we are back. We've taken this out of our oven. We've had it in for 50 minutes. And we just got it to the point where we've let this cool about 5-6 minutes. Just so I could just touch the pan. Because what I want to do, I want to get it out of this pan. And I want to put it on a rack and let it cool all the way. But we want to get it out of the pan. So all you really have to do is we're just going to take it. And we're going to flip it right out of that pan. And we're just going to take it like this. And we're just going to let it sit and we're going to let it cool off to the point that we know we can slice this. But as I said, this is why you don't want to go tapping on the pan, because that would have all settled and it would have stuck to the bottom. So we'll let this cool all the way. And as soon as we get this nice and cool, we'll be able to slice it. All right, we've left this cool down. What we're going to do now is I'm just going to remove this and move it over to a solid place. I'm just going to cut this end off real quick. We'll just get that out of the way. Just cut right through this and get a nice slice here. And again, you can let this cool down a little bit further if you want. I just want to do this to show everybody. Now, what you can do with this if you want, before you even slice this, you can make a nice glaze out of some powdered sugar, some water, or a little bit of milk and some butter. And you can glaze this if you want. But what we're going to do, and as you can see, we have all the cinnamon in it. Nice swirl marks. Nothing fell to the bottom. We still have a nice bottom on it. It's nice and moist. And you can smell, it always reminds me of Christmas. Whenever you smell cinnamon, and it makes the whole house smell good. But we're just going to take a little bit off of this. It's very moist. It's got that cinnamon all through it, and the vanilla you can taste. And like I said, you can very easily take and glaze this if you want, put a little powdered sugar on the top, or just exactly the way it is. Now, what I would suggest with this is when you're done, and you're done baking this, I would let it cool all the way, and then either put it, if you have an airtight container, or you want to wrap this, don't let it just sit out like this, because it will get hard. Remember, it is bread, so it's going to get hard on you. Just wrap it up, keep it nice and soft for you, and this will last in your refrigerator probably a good 3-4 days before you start to notice it's going to start tasting a little stale. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you'll like and share with your friends. Hit that notification button, and I will see you next week.